The moment you were waiting for finally arrived. Not with fireworks, not with applause, but with something quieter. A message you weren't supposed to see. A document that shouldn't have existed. A confession slipped through the cracks. A pattern exposed in plain sight. And suddenly, everything inside you went still, because there it was. Proof. Cold. Undeniable. Solid. You weren't imagining it. You weren't overreacting. You weren't too sensitive. The tension you felt, the inconsistencies you tracked, the subtle shifts in tone and behavior, they were real. Your instincts weren't broken. They were precise. For a split second, relief flooded your chest. A release you didn't know you'd been holding for so long. Your nervous system exhaled. Your mind replayed every moment you doubted yourself. But the relief didn't feel light. It felt heavy, because validation doesn't just confirm the truth. It confirms the cost. The nights you questioned your sanity. The conversations where you swallowed your words. The way you shrank just to keep the peace. Now the evidence stands in front of you, unshakable. And instead of celebration, you feel something deeper rising. Not chaos, not revenge. Something sharper, because when truth surfaces, it doesn't just clear your name. It changes the balance. Before this moment, there was another version of the story. The one where you were misunderstanding. Where you were reading too much into it. Where your tone was the problem. Your reaction was the issue. Your questions were dramatic. It wasn't loud. That's what made it powerful. No screaming arguments. No obvious villain. Just subtle corrections. Raised eyebrows. Sighs that made you second-guess yourself. Conversations that ended with you apologizing for things you didn't fully understand. You're overthinking. You're too sensitive. That never happened. And slowly, almost invisibly, your certainty began to erode. You started replaying interactions in your head, adjusting your memory, editing your instincts. Maybe you did imagine that shift in energy. Maybe you did misread that silence. Maybe you were the unstable variable in an otherwise stable system. So you shrank your observations, softened your voice, added disclaimers before speaking. I could be wrong, but became your shield, not because you lacked intelligence. Because you were trying to survive socially. When enough people question your perception, you don't immediately rebel. You recalibrate. You look inward. You audit yourself. You become hyper-aware of your own reactions. And that's the part no one sees. The exhaustion of constantly cross-examining your own mind. The quiet fear that maybe something inside you is broken. You weren't fighting others. You were fighting yourself. And in that internal battle, doubt became louder than instinct. But here's what you didn't understand then. Your sensitivity wasn't instability. It was data. What they called overthinking was actually pattern recognition. You weren't spiraling. You were observing. You noticed the pause before the answer. The slight change in tone. The way stories shifted depending on the audience. You felt the tension in rooms before anyone spoke. You sensed when something was off, even when the surface looked calm. That wasn't instability. That was calibration under pressure. When you grow up navigating unpredictability, emotional, relational, environmental, your nervous system adapts. It learns to scan, to compare, to connect invisible dots. You become fluent in micro-expressions, inconsistencies, subtle contradictions, not because you're paranoid, because you had to be precise. Precision kept you safe. While others moved casually through conversations, you were tracking patterns. While they took words at face value, you measured alignment between language and behavior. You weren't searching for problems. You were detecting misalignment. But when your environment benefits from you not noticing, your awareness gets labeled as the issue. So you internalize the accusation. You tried to dull your perception, to ignore the signals, to become less sharp. And yet, the data kept collecting quickly, consistently, patiently, every dismissed concern, every contradiction you logged mentally, every moment that didn't add up. You thought you were breaking. You were actually building a case. And then, one day, something shifted. The pattern you'd been sensing stopped hiding, and the proof surfaced. And then it happened. The message, the document, the admission, the undeniable alignment of facts that once felt scattered. The pattern you carried alone was suddenly visible to others. On the surface, this should have been the moment of triumph. The apology, the correction, the clean rewriting of your name in clear ink. But that's not how it unfolded. Because when truth disrupts comfort, structures don't celebrate, they tighten. People invested in the old narrative hesitate. Dynamics built on your doubt resist recalibration. Not always maliciously, not always consciously, but predictably. If you were never crazy, then something else was inaccurate. And correcting that requires accountability, adjustment, humility. Not everyone is prepared for that shift. So instead of immediate resolution, you feel subtle friction. Conversations become careful. Energy changes. Some avoid the topic altogether. Others minimize the significance. Yes, but it wasn't that serious. Let's not make this bigger than it needs to be. You notice it instantly. The discomfort, the recalculating, the quiet attempt to preserve what existed before the proof surfaced. And that's when you realize something sobering. Validation doesn't automatically restore balance. It exposes imbalance. It reveals how many pieces were resting on your self-doubt. The truth is out now, but the system around it hasn't fully adjusted. And as you watch the external reactions unfold, something else begins to rise, not outside of you, inside. You thought this would feel peaceful. You imagined validation arriving like closure, like a quiet sunset after a long storm. But instead, something hotter surfaced: anger. Not explosive, not reckless, but steady, controlled. Because now you can see the cost clearly, the opportunities you second-guessed. The rooms where your credibility was quietly reduced. The nights you lay awake, dissecting your own memory. The way you edited yourself just to stay acceptable. Proof doesn't just confirm you were right. It highlights how long you carried the weight alone. And that realization stings. You're not angry because you need revenge. You're angry because you see the unnecessary suffering, the self-doubt that never belonged to you, the reputation that absorbed projections it didn't deserve. But here's the shift. Anger, when clean, is not destruction, it's information. It tells you a boundary was crossed, a truth was suppressed, a line inside you was violated. Anger becomes dangerous only when it controls you. Right now, it's doing something different. It's clarifying you. It's separating what you will tolerate from what you never will again. And instead of exploding outward, it begins consolidating inward. Because real power isn't loud, it's restrained. In this moment, you have a choice. You can chase visible victory, or you can redefine justice entirely, because justice isn't humiliation. It isn't watching someone crumble the way you once did. It isn't retaliation disguised as righteousness. That's reaction. And reaction still ties you to the distortion. Real justice is quieter. It's clarity that no one can take from you again. It's the end of self-gaslighting. It's the decision that you will never again shrink your perception to make others comfortable. Justice is a boundary. It's saying, internally first, I trust what I see. It's withdrawing access from dynamics that required your confusion to function. It's refusing to participate in narratives that distort your reality. No announcement required. No dramatic confrontation necessary, just alignment. When your inner compass locks back into place, something stabilizes, your posture shifts, your tone tightens, your tolerance narrows. You don't need revenge, you need coherence. And when you stand in that coherence, something else happens. Truth doesn't just free you, it increases pressure. Because once you see clearly, you cannot go back to pretending you don't. And not everyone is ready for the version of you who no longer doubts. Every environment builds a story about you. Sometimes it's accurate. Sometimes it's convenient. For a while, the convenient story was that you were mistaken. Too intense. Misreading things. That version of you was easier to manage. Easier to dismiss, easier to place within a predictable role. But now that narrative is cracking. And when a narrative collapses, discomfort spreads. Not because people are evil, not because there's some grand scheme against you, but because correction disrupts structure. It forces recalibration. It shifts subtle hierarchies that were built around assumption. If you were never unstable, then someone misjudged. If you were never overreacting, then someone minimized. If you were right, then something in the system was wrong. That realization creates tension, so you may notice it. The defensiveness, the reframing, the attempt to smooth things over without fully addressing what changed. It's not always loud resistance. Sometimes it's avoidance. Sometimes it's excessive politeness. Sometimes it's a quiet hope that everything will return to normal. But normal depended on your self-doubt, and that version of you no longer exists. As the old story dissolves,
You feel the space opening around you.
less distortion, less confusion, more clarity. And in that space, a deeper realization begins forming. You don't need the narrative to adjust perfectly. You need yourself to remain steady within the shift. Because sovereignty isn't granted by others. It's claimed internally. The old you wanted to be understood immediately, wanted to explain everything, prove every detail, defend every instinct. The old you reacted fast because doubt felt dangerous. Silence felt like surrender. You believed that if you didn't correct the narrative instantly, it would harden into permanence. But the version of you standing here now is different. You don't need revenge, you need precision. Precision is slower. Calibrated, intentional. You observe before speaking. You let others reveal their positioning. You document patterns instead of arguing about them. You choose when to engage and when to withdraw, not from fear, but from strategy, because power is not loud, power is measured. The reactive version of you burned energy, trying to be validated. The evolved version conserves energy and lets alignment speak over time. You no longer interrupt distortions emotionally. You correct them structurally, with boundaries, with distance, with selective access. Silence is no longer weakness, it's assessment. You've realized something critical. The more composed you are, the clearer everything becomes. People show themselves when you stop rushing to manage their perception. Old you. Defensive explaining, second-guessing. New you, steady, watching, choosing. That shift changes the entire dynamic. Because when you stop reacting impulsively, you stop being predictable. And unpredictability, when grounded in control, is influence. This is where the identity fully begins to transform, not into someone colder, but into someone precise. What they thought was pressure was actually refinement. Being misunderstood forced you to rely on your own analysis. When no one validated your perception, you had to sit with it alone. Test it. Strengthen it. Trust it without applause. That builds something different. Being doubted sharpened your discernment. You learned to separate emotion from evidence. Intuition from impulse. Signal from noise. You stopped reacting to every challenge and started evaluating the source. Isolation did something unexpected too. It removed distraction. When you couldn't lean on reassurance, you built internal structure. When support felt inconsistent, you became consistent with yourself. They didn't see that happening. They saw withdrawal. You were building stability. They saw silence. You were building clarity. They saw distance. You were building standards. And now the result is visible. You are no longer seeking permission to be right. No longer scanning faces for approval. No longer softening your truth to remain digestible. There is a steadiness in you that wasn't there before. Not arrogance, not defiance, certainty. And that certainty doesn't need to announce itself. It simply stands. This is the upgrade, quiet, structural, permanent. And now, instead of intensity rising, something else begins to settle, clarity. When you step back far enough, the pattern looks different. What felt like chaos was conditioning. What felt like rejection was refinement. What felt like isolation was instruction. Every dismissal sharpened your intuition. You learned to listen beneath words, to detect misalignment without needing it announced. You stopped depending on surface harmony and started reading structural truth. Every accusation strengthened your emotional regulation. Instead of collapsing under projection, you studied it. You learned when to absorb feedback and when to discard it. You developed the ability to pause before reacting, to respond from awareness rather than wounded impulse. That doesn't happen accidentally. Pressure created precision, not because you were chosen, not because you were destined, because you adapted. Refinement isn't glamorous. It's repetitive, it's uncomfortable, it requires friction, and you had plenty of that. But friction polishes. You weren't being singled out for suffering. You were being shaped by resistance. And now you can see it clearly, the instability around you, forced stability within you. The distortion around you, forced clarity within you. This wasn't punishment, it was training. And training produces something unmistakable, authority. Authority doesn't arrive with noise. It returns quietly. You notice it in small shifts first. The way you no longer rush to explain yourself. The way your no feels complete, without decoration. The way you pause before committing, measuring alignment instead of seeking approval. Your posture changes, not physically alone, structurally. You stand inside your decisions. You don't outsource them. You don't crowdsource your intuition. Access to you becomes intentional. Not everyone gets your full transparency anymore. Not everyone gets unlimited explanations. Not everyone gets repeated chances to misunderstand you. That isn't arrogance. It's calibration. Justice at this stage no longer looks like correction. It looks like self-respect. It looks like removing yourself from dynamics that distort you. It looks like conserving energy for spaces that recognize clarity without resistance. You're not trying to dominate anyone. You're simply no longer negotiable in areas that cost you your sanity before. And the calm in that realization is unmistakable. No grand speeches, no victory laps. Just a grounded awareness of who you are and what you will not return to. This is authority without ego, steadied. Clean, and now everything integrates. You don't need to chase apologies. If they come, they come. If they don't, the truth remains unchanged. You don't demand recognition anymore. Recognition is fragile when it's forced. What's real doesn't need pressure to stand. It stands because it's supported by evidence, by time, by consistency. Let them adjust. Let them reprocess who you are without the distortion. Let them feel the discomfort of updating their internal narrative. That work is theirs. Yours is simpler. Maintain alignment, maintain boundaries, maintain clarity. If anyone tries to pull you back into the old dynamic, the old doubt, the old defensiveness, the old confusion, they won't meet the previous version of you. They'll meet structure. They'll meet calm refusal. They'll meet decisions that don't bend under subtle pressure. Not hostility, not revenge boundaries, because justice was never about watching anyone fall. It was about standing correctly. And now you are, steady in perception, measured in response, unmoved by attempts to rewrite what has already been proven. You don't need to fight for your sanity anymore. You embody it. You were never crazy. You were calibrated.